And here we are back on All of Us. It's Greg Sher with you. I hope you had a great weekend. You can see I've got a makeover behind me. This is actually the real deal. It's a real makeover. It's legit. And I am going to invite someone to the stage that invited me onto a stage not too long ago. That is James Kleimann. He is the managing editor of HousingWire. What's up, James? How are you, buddy?
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Last time we did this, you were inviting me onto a stage in where were we? We were in Arizona, right?
We were in Scottsdale.
Yeah, that was a heck of an event. The best event I've ever been to, by the way. And Housing Wire's got another blockbuster event coming up, the IMB Summit, October 1st in Dallas, Texas, which we'll definitely talk a little bit about here shortly. But let's get into this article this morning that was published by Housing Wire regarding servicing. And this is a big topic right now. Lots of people talking about it. I had a post, James, around servicing that broke my own personal record, over 300,000 impressions on my post. And the thesis was that servicers are getting ready to eat your lunch if you're an IMB. And the thing just exploded. And then we've got this follow-up just a couple of weeks later. Appreciate Diego Sanchez for giving me some love and mentioning my previous post sort of as it overlays into this one today. Tell us about the post this morning from Flavia, and then let's get into servicing and the ups and downs, the good and the bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing and interesting topic, and it's also changed so much over the last couple of years. So I think the really interesting moment that we're facing right now is you have a lot of different strategies. And so as we expect rates to get a little bit lower, when exactly, not exactly sure. A lot of people think that, the rate cuts are already kind of built in right now. But let's say hypothetically that rates are going to drop later into Q3, into Q4. There are a lot of folks who think that the big aggregators, as they're called, they don't like being called that, by the way, but some of these big companies that have acquired a massive amount of servicing rights over the last couple of years are really well positioned. And others take a very different strategy. So you have companies like UWM, and they say, you know what, we don't believe in that. That's not our business model. Even Rocket, which does retain a lot of their servicing, they were one of the biggest sellers of MSRs in 2023. So you have a lot of different companies out there. They're all trying something different. And if you think about the size of the opportunity, so how many people have a mortgage rate under 5%? It's almost 80%, right? They're probably not going to be in the money even in the next cycle, whatever that looks like. And so when you think about the opportunity, it's those 20% of originations, many of which were done last year or this year, really when rates were starting to jump. So who among that set of lenders, servicers, is best positioned to get there? Who has the inside track? And so what we wanted to do in this report is take a look at the big ones. So Mr. Cooper, obviously everybody knows, hopefully by now, that they're the biggest servicer in America. They're massive, and they acquired the assets of Flagstar about a month ago. When that deal is completed, they're going to have just an incredible number of MSRs that they can really jump in on.
Yeah, 1.5 trillion is the number you published this morning. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And that's is that 10% of the entire market? Something like
That's
that?
probably about that. I mean, the market,
A little bit more?
It's probably about that. Yeah. I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but
yeah, I think I read somewhere it was about 14 trillion. James, when I think about, look through the lens of an IMB, I think it's bad for IMBs if you want to hang on to your books, if it's a gradual decline, because as you mentioned, of the entire pie, only 20% of it is eligible, and so they can stay hyper focused on that 20%. Whereas in the past, particularly around COVID, when rates just fell so dramatically, there was too much business, and they had to shut off the valves, which opened up opportunities for IMBs. Is that the right lens that I'm looking at this through? And I'm also going to turn my lights on behind me. So if anyone's wondering if this is a virtual background, you're about to see that it's not. But go ahead and answer my question.
I think what you're going to see is that there's going to be a lot of well-positioned IMBs that have a fair amount of capital that are still going to be out there fighting, and they have pretty solid operations. They've invested very heavily into either call center models, or they have good, distributed retail LOs who are able to capitalize on refis. If you're a business owner, you have an IMB right now, you're probably still better off focusing on purchase business, right? Even though refis are easier to nail and cheaper to do, I think you're probably safer focusing on the purchase business. But if you can even up the share of refis up to say 30%, 40% of your mix, given the operational costs of refi, it's probably a better decision than not pursuing it at all. So I don't think it's going to be an either or, but certainly one of the criticisms that you often find is that some of these big aggregators, the whole strategy is just to use the servicing to get that book of business, that they're not really true originators, and that criticism is going to depend on kind of how you view the market, right?
Well, there are some dangers, right? Let's talk about the dangers. Widespread recession would be a danger, right? Ability to
Sure.
repay, that's something, right? And then uh, values going down. Now, Stan Middleman from Freedom was quoted as saying that the average LTV on his book is around 50%, and the average DTI in the low 40s, and the credit scores are in the 700s. Now, a lot of those things can change based on what I just said, right? All those variables, really. If you talk about recession and potentially um, values plummeting. Now, there's nothing out there right now that says that that's going to happen. But if you look at just the natural evolution and ups and downs, all that's going to happen eventually. The question is, will it happen in this cycle?
Yeah, I mean, sure. There's always risk in mortgage, right? Whether you're on the origination side or the servicing side, there are certainly a lot of companies out there that don't even want to bother. Like it's just not part of their business model. They don't want to be servicing the assets. They don't want to get stuck holding the bag if something goes wrong. Obviously, we're going to see more risk when you get into kind of the Ginnie Mae side of the equation, and that's going to be true no matter what, right? Like if there is a delay in the time that that the money's not coming in from the borrower and the time that the government insurance kicks in, yeah, that's something you might run into a liquidity problem with. I do think overall the market is still pretty healthy. If you have a lot of loans on your books that are 50% LTVs and somebody loses their job, yeah, it's going to be a challenge no matter what. Theoretically, I mean that's why you hedged, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that there's kind of a give and take to it. It is always going to be a bit of brinksmanship when you play with assets that are going to be a little bit more risky than just. I mean, anybody can acquire agency MSRs if they want, right? Like
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it comes
it
down
just
to
depends.
ability to repay. Right now, it looks good, right? All
It
indications
looks
are that
good.
the economy is humming along.
Yep.
It's slowing down a little bit in certain sectors, but you talk about a recession and people having issues paying their bills, then it becomes a little bit sticky. Let's jump off of the servicing in just a moment. But lastly, I want to talk about UWM strategy, uh, selling their servicing because they fancy themselves as a company for the broker, a company for the people, right? But then they sell that servicing off and they say they reinvest that into technology to make their platforms better. But do they also then make those folks that are originating those loans and sending them in vulnerable to the same people that are going after their business? What do you think about that?
Management would say, "No, our guys are the best. That's what we have." We're at the top of the IMF rankings every quarter, and if you're a good originator, you should be out there going through your CRM, you should be out there hitting up your local, clients. You should know what's going on in your book of business, right? I mean, that's up to you. It depends on the size of the mortgage broker shop that they're working with. Some have better technology in terms of tracking, than others and kind of the marketing mix. I do think, yeah, I mean, it's obviously a definitive strategy by UWM to sell. They're I think either one or number two in MSR sales over the last couple of years. So they're taking a risk by doing this. I think you could also argue UWM has better technology than 99.9% of originators out there. And if you agree with the thesis that the mortgage broker today, not maybe not 10 years ago, is better equipped than ever to get that business back, then you probably want to bet on yourself.
Yeah, there's no
Can they
question.
outmaneuver?
UWM has definitely raised the bar. They've done an incredible
Sure.
job at offering technology and seeing that brokers are here to stay. I want to discuss. I know I said last question. This will be the last one on servicing because you look at some companies in the IMB space, Cross Country, New American, Guild, and I'd have to say they're in the top 5, right, of those that still do retail. I mean, they're somewhere in there. They're around the top with their servicing, and And so I want you to explain to the audience how these companies kind of book those servicing amounts, like, and then how that can come back to harm them as there's runoff on the books.
Yeah, so they're gonna be at a mix, right? So they wanna sell some, they wanna free up some cash, they wanna make sure that they're operationally humming along pretty well, but they do wanna maintain a position on some of the coupons, that are coming in over the next couple quarters, depending on where rates go. So they wanna take a more balanced approach. Some, as I said earlier, wanna sell everything and just, focus entirely. So it's a little bit more of a balanced approach. I think, again, they're making the same bet, which is we think our origination engine and our kind of integration between servicing and the kind of origination segments of our business are better than the Mr. Coopers, right? The Penny Macs, the guys that maybe we sold our MSRs to and may or may not have first position to get to that borrower. So that's the risk. Now, of course, you also have to consider that they're going to have write downs to some extent, but they're not going to be as big because they don't carry, they don't have $1 trillion of servicing on their books, right? So they're not going to see a write down as rates drop, and that comes a little bit more in the money.
It's just so interesting, the balancing act, right? I mean, between
Yeah,
companies keeping servicing to get the monthly premiums and then selling it to recapitalize to these servicers that now want to destroy the folks that they just purchased the books from. It's like it's this cat and mouse game. It's just so fascinating. Um, James, you've been really much more out there on social media in the last 6 months or so. I love your stuff. And I just want to ask you what kind of has been your motivation to put yourself out there, and what kind of rewards are you reaping from that?
yeah. I think good reporting requires a deep familiarity with the audience and with the sources and making sure that you know what makes them tick and where they're spotting opportunities and challenges. Your reporting is only going to be as good as the people that you're covering, right? And so I want to make sure that I'm able to find people where they are. And increasingly they're on LinkedIn. I think especially in the mortgage space that had historically been on Facebook and within a lot of groups, and there's a lot of echo chamber. I find that, not that it's perfect or anything like that, but LinkedIn is a pretty good, interesting area for conversation that also isn't super divisive. I think people are generally a little bit more polite. I've no doubt gotten my fair share of hate mail. A lot of people don't like my takes and they think I'm a bit of a dope on some matters, and they might be right.
Hey,
Uh,
it comes
so
with
so
the
fair enough. If
territory. Hey, believe me,
Yeah,
take it from me. Yeah, it comes with the territory, right? Just
yeah, and look, like if you want to put yourself in the space, you're going to be subject to criticism, and I think you need to have thick skin. But I find that been a really, really good sourcing opportunity, and I'm able to talk to people maybe that had never heard of me. Doing editing mostly. Editing is a largely behind the scenes kind of work. And it's a lot of telling your reporters, hey, this is something that I think is interesting, but I want you to go out there and hunt down the information and assess the credibility and then come back and inform the rest of the market. And it's a big responsibility. And so I'm able to do my own reporting, I think, at a much higher level and get a lot deeper because I've been able to leverage kind of just the platform of LinkedIn and some other social services.
you have to start doing videos here soon. That's all the rage right now. I'm starting to do more. We got to see you like whip out that cap cut, man. Let's go. We got to
So
get
one of
hit.
the challenges so far there has been I work from home, and I have
And
a
when you
newborn.
have Henry now, you have a
I
newborn,
have
man.
an 11-week-old baby and a 2.5-year-old toddler, and so there's basically no way to get any quiet time for more than 20 minutes. So it's been tricky,
Hey, look, you can
but
be that
certainly
guy that's like changing diapers while he talks mortgage. You'd be the only guy doing that. You realize that? That
that's
could
a
be
niche.
that could be
Yeah,
your lane,
I
you
could
know?
even entirely focus on Gen. What is it, Alpha? Like, well, I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
what the
coming. Hey,
babies
it's
of
right
today
behind
are.
it's right around the bend. That comes after Gen Z,
Indeed,
you know? Hey, let's talk about the NAR settlement because about 8 months ago, actually, it was probably closer to 10 months ago, you wrote an article, what if 1 million agents left the real estate industry? I don't know why you're laughing right now, because is that one of those things that has been, like, haunting you or something? Because it actually, I believe that the idea was that if the NAR, lawsuit, reached a settlement and fees were decoupled, then you'd have all these onesie twosie agents that all of a sudden it just wouldn't be worth it, right? The juice wouldn't be
sure.
worth the squeeze. And so here we are now in that moment. And do you still see a scenario come January when the renewals come where you're going to have a huge clip leave the business? And why are you smiling about it that I brought that up?
So
Is
I'm
that
smiling because
yeah.
there's no story that I've written in all of my years of journalism. We're at about 15 years now that has elicited such strong opinions and so much hate mail. I get like an outrageous amount of people who find it on Google and they decide to share a piece of their mind, which is fine, and that's totally cool. I might be wrong. I might be entirely wrong. My thesis has been pretty consistent, which is if you look at the numbers, let's say there are 1.5 million real estate agents, a very, very strong percentage of them do not do more than a deal a year, 2 deals a year in some cases, and so we consider them to be marginal agents. I don't mean that as a pejorative. I mean that to say that they're not really doing this as an everyday job. If I had someone, who were a mechanic and he wrote 1 or 2 mortgage articles a year, I wouldn't consider them to be a professional, right? And so that's often what you see because it's the PTA mom or it's, a guy who's got a T-ball team or something, and he figures he can make a little cash, or somebody who wants to do their own real estate deals, right? So you see a lot of that, and in the aggregate, they actually do a lot of deals because there are so many towns in America in which Aunt Betty sells 1 house a year, 2 houses a year, but they don't really compare to the everyday agent who is hopefully doing 50 plus deals a year, right? And that's really what you want to see. You want to see at least 2 deals a month to really get into that upper echelon of 0 to 2% in kind of the leaderboard, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think most people are optimistic by nature, especially if you're in a sales business, and so you probably will renew your dues with NAR in January when they come up, right? Because you're probably betting on the likelihood that you'll be able to do a couple deals, and that will be worth getting, your state or local association licensing plus NAR fees if it's applicable. Not everybody
Yep.
will, but most will. So I think we're probably going to see much more washing out in 2026.
So if you had to rewrite the article, would you lower it to 500,000? You think a million was aggressive in hindsight?
No, because I do think that a million will probably wash out over time. I don't think it's going to be over the next 3 years or anything like that. I mean, certainly there are a lot of people out there who are smarter than I, who have studied this longer
I
than
gave you
I.
I gave you the chance for a retraction, bro. Come on.
I'm no coward, Greg.
Hey, hey,
I
wait.
stand
Hey,
by
you
it.
didn't you didn't fall for it, man. I'm looking to break some news here, I know you're the newsbreaker, but James Kleimann, he reverses course, cuts the projection in half. Hey, when are you gonna write the article on the mortgage side? Let's do that one. Like,
So
what's
we're
it gonna
working on
look like?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's it gonna look
So
like now? How many mortgage people beyond the 100,000 plus that have already left are gonna leave as a result of this? What's that number look like?
I mean, that's the trillion-dollar question, Greg. So when we look at the makeup of the LO space, you also have a lot of people who have been kind of just stringing a deal or two together, who are just not consistently able to get real estate agent business. And again, it's the same dynamic that I think is problematic. And maybe, although it might be healthy for the overall industry, it will cause some short-term, maybe medium-term pain if you're an LO and you don't get reliable business from active agents who are consistently doing at least a deal a month. And that's because if you're relying on an agent who's only done 1 deal in 6 months, but there are 15 of them, you're betting that those 15, or at least a significant proportion of them, are going to remain in business next year and the year that follows and the year that follows. And so if you're relying, and most, LOs are pretty reliant on buy side agents, unless they have, a lead generating engine like something going on in NFM, for example, or, there are a lot of other examples of being able to generate your own leads on the financing side, but most do not, right? And so you are very much secondary in that relationship in a lot of cases. And so if they're gone, well, who's still left? Let's say it is 500,000 agents. Chances are they already have a good, strong network of top performing LOs who they know are going to close business and are not going to be, creating problems for them. They're probably less likely in those cases to take a chance on the LO who they haven't worked with. And so it just gets a little like the juice gets harder to squeeze, as you said, right? And there are fewer people who can squeeze the juice.
So is there gonna be a fallout on the originator side?
Absolutely.
Does that mean there's gonna be further, capitulation on the lender side, or will we have this rise up from new entities in a substantive way?
Lenders have largely started holding the line a little bit on LO comp. They haven't been as aggressive as they were in 2020 and 2020. And obviously these are different market conditions, right? Like I don't know anybody right now who's out there saying, "Hey, loan originator, I'm going to give you $3 million if you join my shop." That could change, but you also have to think about the larger market forces. Are they going to have, enough in terms of their warehouse lines? Are they going to have enough cash on hand? Are they going to want to do it? Are the LOs going to be bringing enough business? Are these branches going to be sustainable enough where they want to make that calculation? In some cases, yeah, it works out pretty well, and you play the long game. In others, you pay out a lot of money and you don't get enough production, and they're just waiting for the golden handcuffs to fall off, and then they jump to the next ship that'll offer them the best package. So that's going to be the major thing to watch in the next cycle, Greg.
Yeah, I can't wait for that article to come out. I'm in the chat right now. You realize your boss is listening to this?
No,
Clayton
but
Collins.
okay,
He's here.
that's cool.
Good afternoon from Dallas. Now, does that make the nerve level ratchet up a little bit, couple percentage points, or not at all?
No,
Not
no,
at all. Okay, I like that. Hey, look,
no.
confidence
Clayton's
never
the
hurt
best.
anybody.
Clayton's an awesome guy, really smart. A lot of people don't know this, but his dad is also a mortgage broker.
I did know that. I did. DID, not did not. I did know that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him in Dallas and seeing you there October 1st at the George W. Bush Library. I'm going to be speaking about my presence on LinkedIn and how I've been able to get over 4 million views in the last 12 months. I'm going to do, a how-to for C-suite folks and how it can impact your bottom line, right? Because nobody wants to waste time online unless it rings the register. Like we're all trying to make a living out here and feed our families, and I'm really looking forward to that. Where can folks go? And then I have another question, a personal question for you. Nobody jump off yet. Where can folks go to get their tickets?
So
What do
we
you
we
think?
have a whole page set up. I'll leave a link in here
Yeah, leave a link in
and
here.
make sure that
All right,
everybody's able. We have a couple spots left, and
all
it's
right.
going to be really well attended. And I think it's going to be an awesome day. So I'm really looking forward to it.
A couple more comments, and I'm going to ask you my question here. It's a big one. Brian View, he runs FinLocker. He likes the new studio. He says it's on point. April Bowman. I agree. Don't leave purchases behind. If the refi boom starts, you need a good mix for your business for the future. So she aligns with you there. Mark Cuttingham. He's a tech leader in our space. Thank you for keeping us informed in the current market. Enjoyed listening to your conversation. I want to talk to you real quickly, and this is what everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know about your hat collection. Okay, and I'm actually shocked. I'm glad I didn't bet my life if you'd have a hat on. This might be the first time I've ever seen you without a hat. That's sort of your staple, your trademark. I want to know, first of all, how far is the closest hat from where your arm is right now? Do you have one
It's
like
pretty
right
far.
there? Pretty far? So you
Yeah,
can't
there's
not
nothing in
there's
here.
not one in reach.
No, one of my kids, pretty yucky, but he vomited all over my
Oh, that's
favorite hat.
amazing.
So
Please send me that hat. I'd like to wear it.
it's it's
James, how
it's in the
many
garbage. Yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm in the market. If anyone knows a good haberdashery, let me know.
I'm thinking you have more than one hat. How
Yeah,
many do
got
you
a
have?
couple others in
How many? You
reserve.
got 10? Do you have 10? It's just like
Well,
so,
probably. I've
I
never
collect
counted.
baseball cards, some people or football cards, some people collect purses and shoes. You collect hats. What do you think of this guy over my shoulder here? So this is the new studio. I could have put any number of players behind me. I like Baker Mayfield, I like him because he's an underdog type. He's bounced around a little bit, maybe a little misunderstood. Now he's winning and he got the big contract. And of course, the NFL season's kicking off here shortly. You're looking at me like, what is the NFL? Do they play that with a tennis ball, a basketball, a football? You look perplexed. Is that safe to
So
say you're not a big football guy?
I don't watch football. I had a local reporting job. It was Ridgewood versus Paramus, high school rivalry. It was Thanksgiving, and the scoreboard was broken that day. And so when I went to cover the game, I thought like I could Wikipedia enough about how American football worked because I've just never watched it. It's just not an interest to me. And I thought whenever you kick the ball through the yellow posts, that it was always 3 points. Turns out it's sometimes 1 point, and I didn't know that, and so I got the score entirely wrong. And yeah, it was probably the second most hated article that I've written. So
Okay. All right. Well, look, you're amazing. Love HousingWire. Love what you do. It's not an easy job. I have a little bit of a journalism background, so I know that it's a very, very challenging. And you got the hot hand right now. HousingWire is the source that most people turn to. So continue the great work. I also want to mention that coming up next Monday, we're not taking a day off just because it's Labor Day. We'll be on the airwaves. I'm going to have a very special guest. Not that you're not one, James, but I'm going to be speaking to a Gold Star family who lost their son, one of the 13 soldiers killed at the Abbey Gates in Afghanistan several years ago. David Lee Espinosa perished that unfortunate day, and we'll be checking in with his parents to thank them for the sacrifice their son made. That will be next Monday at 1 p.m. James, I love you, man. I'm not afraid to say it. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Greg. Take
All right.
care.
Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye now.